Far away from cities filled with lights and noise, there was a very calm forest. The trees in this forest stood tall, their branches wide and welcoming. At night, the moon rose slowly above the trees, casting its silver glow gently over everything below. The leaves shone softly under the moonlight, as if they were being kissed by the stars themselves. The air smelled of earth and pine, and every sound was quiet. Just the wind brushing against leaves, and sometimes the hoot of an owl far away. In this peaceful forest lived a small squirrel. He had no name and no family nearby. He spent most of his days climbing trees, looking for food, and sitting on high branches watching the sun move across the sky. While other animals had families or friends, he often stayed alone. He didn't complain. He had learned to live quietly and gently with the world around him. One evening, while the sky turned shades of orange and purple, the little squirrel saw something glowing near the roots of an old tree. Curious, he climbed down the trunk and hopped over to the light. What he found surprised him. It was a small, smooth pebble, glowing softly with a light that came from inside it. The squirrel touched it gently with his paw, and the glow became warmer. That night, as the stars filled the sky and the forest grew still, the squirrel curled up beside the glowing stone. To his amazement, a soft voice came from the pebble. It wasn't loud or scary. It sounded like a gentle breeze or a quiet song. The voice began to tell him a story. It was about a young bird who helped a wounded fox, even when no one else would. The story was full of kindness, warmth, and hope. The squirrel listened quietly, his eyes growing heavier with every word. By the time the story ended, he was already asleep, wrapped in a peaceful dream where everyone was kind and no one was ever lonely. From that night on, the pebble became his best friend. Every evening he would return to the same place under the tree. He would curl up next to the glowing pebble, and it would share another story. Each night, a different tale unfolded. Some were about animals who helped each other during storms. Others told of distant lands filled with talking trees and singing rivers. There were stories of bravery, friendship, and the magic of doing good. The squirrel looked forward to bedtime more than anything else. His heart, once a little heavy with loneliness, began to feel lighter. Though he still spent his days alone, he no longer felt empty. The stories filled his mind with dreams, and his nights with peace. He would wake up smiling, ready to greet the sun and climb the trees once more. One night, the pebble told a story about a lion who lost his roar. All the animals thought he was no longer brave, but a tiny mouse came to him and reminded him that true courage didn't come from a loud voice but from gentle actions. The lion, touched by the mouse's kindness, found strength again. The squirrel loved this story. It reminded him that even the smallest creatures could do great things. The seasons slowly changed. Spring flowers turned to summer fruits, leaves turned orange in the fall, and snow quietly blanketed the trees in winter. Through every season, the squirrel and the pebble stayed together. Even when the nights were cold, the pebble's glow stayed warm and bright. The stories continued, endless, magical, and full of heart. Sometimes other animals would pass by. A curious rabbit, a sleepy raccoon, or a passing deer would notice the squirrel curled up beside the light. They would stop for a moment, watch the calm scene, and move on, not wanting to disturb the gentle quiet. No one asked questions, but everyone felt that something special was happening there. One day, a young bird who had lost her way landed near the tree. She was scared, tired, and didn't know where her family was. The squirrel, remembering the story of the bird who helped the fox, offered her a place to rest. He shared some nuts he had gathered, and when night came, he let her lie next to the pebble. That night, the pebble told a story about a squirrel and a bird who became friends. The bird listened, amazed, and the squirrel smiled. As they both drifted off to sleep, the forest around them seemed to sigh with peace. From that night on, the bird stayed close. She helped the squirrel find food, and he showed her how to jump from branch to branch. Soon, more animals began to visit. They didn't always stay, but they came to listen. The pebble never ran out of stories. It welcomed everyone. Each creature who stopped to rest heard something that made them feel better, safer, and happier. The squirrel, once alone, now had a quiet circle of friends. They didn't speak much, but their eyes were kind and their hearts full. Each night, they lay beside the tree in silence as the glowing pebble whispered dreams into their ears. One evening, the pebble told the squirrel a special story. It was about him, about a lonely creature who found a magical stone and became the heart of a peaceful place in the forest. The squirrel listened closely, his eyes shining. He had never imagined himself as a part of a story. That night, when he closed his eyes, he dreamed of all the animals he had met, of the soft lights in the sky and the warm glow beside him. He dreamed of stars falling gently through the trees and of a world where everyone had a friend. Time continued to pass. The forest remained calm. The tree where the pebble lay became a quiet meeting place for those who needed rest. No one spoke loudly there. Everyone who visited knew to walk softly and listen. Though the squirrel grew older, he never stopped listening. He never stopped dreaming, and the pebble never stopped glowing. Even today, deep in that quiet forest, the moon still kisses the leaves and the tree still stands tall. If you listen closely on a quiet night, you might hear a soft voice in the breeze, telling stories of kindness, of courage, and of a little squirrel who believed in the magic of dreams. And maybe, if you're lucky, you'll find the glowing pebble for yourself. Just follow the gentle light and let your heart stay open, because sometimes the most peaceful dreams begin with a small light, a quiet voice, and the courage to listen. Far beneath the surface of the calm blue ocean, where the sunlight danced like golden threads through the water, lived a tiny baby turtle. He was soft-shelled, gentle-hearted, and full of dreams. His home was among the corals and the underwater, plants that swayed slowly like they were singing in slow motion. The baby turtle loved one thing more than anything else, a soft lullaby that his mother used to hum before bedtime. But one day, something changed. The lullaby was gone. The melody that helped him sleep every night disappeared, leaving him feeling lost and restless. He would curl up under a coral reef and close his eyes, but without the sweet lullaby, the ocean felt too quiet, and the silence felt heavy. He missed the comforting tune that used to flow through the water like a gentle hug. So, the baby turtle decided to go on a journey to find it. He started his swim with small flippers paddling slowly. Though he was tiny in a big ocean, his heart was full of hope. The sea around him sparkled in the sunlight and bubbles rose like stars from the sandy floor. He asked a school of tiny silver fish swimming by, "Have you heard a lullaby? It's soft, gentle, and makes you feel warm inside." The fish looked at each other and shook their heads. "No, little one," they said kindly, "but follow the glowing fish. They swim where dreams go." The baby turtle thanked them and continued swimming. Soon he saw glowing fish, bright like moonlight. Their scales shimmered with colors he had never seen. They moved slowly, like they were dancing to silent music. Curious and hopeful, he followed them deeper into the sea. The water got darker, cooler and quiet. Yet the glow of the fish lit his way. As they swam further, the soft sea currents wrapped around him like a blanket. They didn't push him or make him tired. They gently guided him. It felt as if the sea itself was helping him find what he had lost. The baby turtle closed his eyes for a moment and thought about the lullaby. He remembered how it made him feel safe, loved, and calm. That feeling was still inside him. Suddenly, a quiet hum echoed around him. It wasn't loud, it wasn't clear, but it was beautiful. His heart jumped. Was it the lullaby? He swam toward the sound, past seaweed forests and caves filled with glowing jellyfish. The hum grew stronger. It was warm, soft, and full of peace. But when he reached the place, he saw something unexpected. A large coral reef was glowing, and tiny sea creatures were singing softly. Not words, but sounds, like the ocean's heartbeat. He listened carefully. It wasn't his lullaby, but it was familiar. The tone, the softness, the rhythm. It felt like it knew him, like it had always been there, waiting. He stayed there for a while, floating above the reef. The humming surrounded him. He realized something. Maybe the lullaby wasn't lost after all. Maybe it had become a part of the sea. Maybe it now lived in the gentle waves, the dancing, corals, and the songs of the sea creatures. He had been searching far and wide, but the truth was, the lullaby had always been inside him. The baby turtle placed his tiny flippers over his heart and listened again. Not with his ears, but with his feelings. He remembered the love of his mother, the comfort of the old song, and how it always helped him sleep. That memory, that feeling, was his lullaby now. The sea whispered to him, through the currents, the fish, the bubbles, and the reef. "Sleep, little one," it seemed to say. "You are safe, you are loved, you are home." Feeling calm, the baby turtle nestled into a quiet corner of the reef. A soft current rocked him gently, like a cradle. The corals glowed softly around him, and the sea creatures continued their quiet song. He closed his eyes, a soft smile on his tiny face. The lullaby was in his heart now, and it would never leave. Again, the ocean sang to him, not with words, but with kindness. Every ripple, every hum, every shimmer of light was part of the song. As he drifted into sleep, the underwater world slowed down around him. The glowing fish circled above like stars in the sea. The coral reef pulsed gently as if breathing, and the baby turtle, once lost and lonely, slept peacefully with the melody of the ocean inside him. From that night on, he never searched again. Every night he simply closed his eyes, listened to his heart, and the lullaby would return, soft, warm, and everlasting. And deep beneath the waves, the baby turtle dreamed. In a quiet village nestled between green hills and peaceful valleys, the sky looked magical every night. The people there had always believed that stars didn't just shine above them. They sometimes fell from the heavens like tiny flakes of snow, bringing with them unspoken dreams and forgotten wishes. Every evening, as the sun disappeared behind, the mountains and darkness gently wrapped the land. A calm hush would settle over the village. The homes glowed with the soft light of lanterns, and families gathered indoors. But not everyone stayed inside. A little girl named Lila had a heart full of wonder. She wasn't like other children who went to bed early. When the stars began to twinkle, Lila would quietly climb out of her window and make her way to the rooftops. From there, she could touch the sky, or at least that's what she believed. Her village was special. On certain nights, it seemed as if the sky was so close that you could stretch out your hand and catch a star. The stars didn't fall like fire or lightning. Instead, they drifted down slowly, softly, glowing like tiny whispers. No one knew why they fell, but people said they were wishes that hadn't found a home yet. Lila had a secret. She could catch those falling wishes with her hands. Each time a glowing piece of light floated down, she would reach out carefully and cradle it like a fragile bird. Sometimes the light would be warm and soft. Other times it would tingle gently, like a tickle, on her palm. Each one felt different, and each one told its own silent story. The villagers didn't know what she did at night. To them, she was just a quiet girl with curious eyes and a gentle smile. But Lila had made it her mission to find the fallen wishes, hold them gently, and return them to the stars if they wanted to go back. One night, the wind was soft, and the sky was covered in sparkling dots of light. Lila sat on her favorite rooftop wrapped in a blanket, her eyes scanning the sky like a guardian of dreams. Suddenly, she saw a small flicker falling, but it looked different. Unlike the other stars that twirled as they fell, This one was barely moving. It didn't glow brightly. In fact, it was almost invisible. But Lila noticed it. She always noticed the quiet things that others missed. She reached out with both hands as the dim light slowly descended. When it landed in her palms, she was surprised. The wish was cold and faint, and it didn't speak through warmth like the others had. It just sat there, quiet and unsure. "Are you a wish?" Lila whispered gently. The light gave off a small pulse, like a heartbeat too afraid to speak. Lila didn't ask more questions. She simply held it close to her chest and wrapped it in her scarf. "It's okay," she said. "You don't have to shine if you're not ready." That night, she didn't send the wish back into the sky. She took it home with her and placed it on her windowsill. It didn't glow. It didn't move. But she knew it was listening. Every night after that, Lila would talk to the little light. She told it stories about the stars she had caught, the dreams they carried, and how each one had found its place in the sky again. She didn't ask the wish to speak or shine. She just kept it company. Days turned into weeks, and the little light remained quiet. Some nights it would shimmer a little, then fade again. But Lila never gave up. She believed that every dream, no matter how small or scared, could find its light again. One evening, when the sky was especially dark and no other stars were falling, Lila sat beside the wish and asked softly, "Do you know why you fell?" For the first time, the wish glowed faintly. Not bright, just enough to be seen. It gave off a soft hum, not a sound, but a feeling. Lila understood. It had been afraid to shine. It didn't think it was special enough to light the sky. It thought it would be forgotten. Lila smiled and said, "Even the quietest light can shine the brightest, but only when it feels safe." That night, she didn't go to the rooftops. She stayed by the window, holding the wish in her hands. Outside, the wind sang softly through the trees. The village slept peacefully, and the stars above watched in silence. And then, something magical happened. The wish in Lila's hand began to glow, not with a burst of fire or a flash of light, but with a calm, steady warmth. It grew brighter, not loud or fast, but confidently, like a candle finally brave enough to light the darkness. Lila's eyes widened with joy. "You're shining," she whispered, her voice trembling with happiness. The wish hovered above her hand and spun slowly. It glowed like a star ready to return to the sky, but it didn't rise. Instead, it floated beside Lila, and she understood. It didn't want to leave just yet. It wanted to learn more, to stay near the girl who had believed in it, to be part of the world that had given it patience and kindness. From that night on, the little glowing wish stayed with Lila. It followed her to the rooftops, sat beside her during quiet walks, and slept beside her on the windowsill. The two became friends. One made of light, the other of love. Together, they started helping other shy wishes. On nights when the stars fell, they searched not only for the bright and glowing ones, but also for those too afraid to shine. Lila would hold them, comfort them, and the gentle wish would hum beside her, reminding the others that it was okay to be scared. As time passed, the villagers began to notice small lights dancing through the sky and hovering near rooftops. They didn't know where the lights came from or why they floated around the village, but they felt something special in the air, a sense of hope, warmth, and dreams waiting to be found. Lila never told anyone her secret, but deep down, she knew that dreams didn't always need to shout to be real. Some needed time, some needed silence, and some, like her shy wish, simply needed someone to believe in them. Years later, the village continued to glow at night, not just from lanterns, but from tiny lights that drifted gently through the sky. Children told stories about a girl who caught stars and whispered to wishes. No one knew her name, but her story lived in the breeze, in the hush of night, and in every soft light that floated down from above. And somewhere, on a quiet rooftop, under a sky full of stars, a grown woman sat with a light by her side, still catching dreams, still helping them shine, one gentle heart at a time. Once upon a time, in a land painted with soft colors and gentle wines, a tiny kitten with sleepy eyes and velvety paws took her first steps beyond the place she called home. She was not in a hurry. Her walk was slow, her tail swaying with the breeze, and her ears twitching at every quiet sound the world whispered. The land she wandered into was unlike anything she had ever seen before. It was a field of golden flowers stretching as far as her curious eyes could reach. These blossoms weren't like the ones near her home. They stood tall, glowing in the sunlight, moving gently with the wind like waves on a quiet sea. The kitten paused, blinking at the shimmering field ahead. The petals sparkled under the warm afternoon light, swaying gracefully. Each step she took into this soft meadow felt like walking on clouds. The earth below was warm and soft, cradling her paws like a mother's embrace. Above her, the sky stretched endlessly, painted in pale blues and warm yellows. Bees floated lazily through the air, not in a rush to gather nectar. They hummed softly, their wings making a soothing song. It wasn't a busy tune, like the buzzing in gardens. This sound was slower, sweeter, as if the bees were singing lullabies just for her. The kitten blinked again, her little body relaxing, with every hum that filled the air. Each flower she passed carried a scent so gentle it made her yawn. Everything around her felt like a dream she had once forgotten but was now slowly remembering. Butterflies joined her on her journey. They fluttered around in circles, painting the air with their delicate wings. Their colors danced: orange, blue, white, and purple. Some flew low, their wings brushing the tops of the flowers. Others soared above, twirling in patterns that seemed made of magic. They didn't fear the kitten. In fact, they flew so close she could feel the breeze of their wings on her whiskers. Though she was still walking, it felt like dreaming. The sky above softened into a calm orange as the sun began to dip behind the distant hills. Long shadows stretched over the field. But even as the light dimmed, nothing felt cold or lonely. Everything seemed to slow down with her heartbeat. As she reached the far end of the meadow, she noticed a tall tree with branches shaped like open arms. It stood proudly, its trunk wide and strong, its leaves rustling with stories carried by the wind. The tree had been there for many years, its bark marked with age, its roots hugging the earth. Sitting under that tree was an owl. He was old, with feathers like silvery clouds and eyes deep like midnight. But his face was kind, and he smiled with the corners of his beak. When he saw the kitten, he didn't move or speak. He just tilted his head slightly, offering a silent invitation. The kitten, now more tired than ever, walked slowly toward him. Her paws brushed against fallen leaves and soft moss. The air under the tree was cooler, filled with the sound of moving leaves and something else, soft chimes, faint and distant, like music from the sky. The kitten curled up beside the owl, her body fitting perfectly against the roots of the tree. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. The owl blinked once and looked toward the sky, which was now painted in deep pinks and dark purples. The first star twinkled far above. That's when the kitten heard it. Wind chimes, soft and clear. They weren't near, and there were no houses or porches around. Still, the music filled the air, as if floating on the breeze. The chimes didn't clang. They sang. Each note was like a secret whispered from far away, like the stars above were sharing their stories through song. The owl closed his eyes, listening to the chimes with a knowing smile. The kitten let her head fall against the soft ground, her tiny heart slowing with peace. She didn't understand the words of the wind chimes, but she felt them deep inside her, like warm feathers wrapping around her soul. That night, the world seemed to stop spinning. Time paused, holding its breath as the stars grew brighter. The breeze wrapped itself around the kitten like a blanket. It wasn't cold, It was gentle, quiet, like a lullaby made of moonlight and silence. She dreamed of clouds that turned into pillows, of butterflies that whispered bedtime stories, and of stars that danced in slow circles just like the butterflies had done during the day. In her dream, the owl spoke, not with words, but through thoughts. He told her that peace wasn't something you found by searching. It was something that found you when your heart became still. Hours passed, and the sky turned darker, filled with countless stars. Some shot across the heavens, leaving glowing trails behind them. Others blinked slowly like sleepy eyes. But one star, just above the tree, shone a little brighter than the rest. It hovered in place, twinkling gently, casting a soft light onto the field below. The golden flowers closed their petals like children falling asleep. The bees stopped humming, now resting inside the blooms. Even the butterflies had disappeared, their colors fading into the night, as if they had become part of the dream too. The kitten didn't wake. She slept without worry, wrapped in calm. Her chest moved slowly with each breath, her paws curled near her chin. The owl kept watch. He didn't sleep, but he didn't need to. His job was to protect peace, to guard dreams, to hold space for those who needed rest. As the night deepened, the tree swayed with the wind. The wind chimes continued their soft song, now lower, slower, barely heard. The star above grew dimmer, its light now enough to touch only the tree, the owl, and the small sleeping kitten. In that field of golden flowers, now turned silver under moonlight, the kitten's journey paused. Not ended, just paused. For tomorrow the sun would rise again and the butterflies would return. The bees would sing again, and the world would turn once more. But for now, none of that mattered. What mattered was rest. What mattered was stillness. What mattered was a small, sleepy kitten, curled beside a friend, under a sky full of quiet light, listening to the gentle secrets of the stars. Because sometimes the greatest adventures happen not when we chase them, but when we slow down enough for them to reach us. And so the kitten slept, safe in a place where time slowed, where dreams floated like petals on a stream, and where the stars above never stopped whispering stories for hearts ready to listen. At the far edge of a quiet lake, where the land gently kissed the water's surface and trees stood like sleepy watchers, there was an old wooden boat. Its paint had faded from years under the sun and rain, and its wood creaked softly with time. Yet it remained strong and kind, like a grandparent holding memories from years long gone. This boat did not sail far anymore. It stayed close to the shore, resting in shallow water where lily pads floated and frogs whispered to the moon. On this still evening, the lake reflected the sky like a giant mirror, showing every cloud, star, and glimmer of night. The world felt hushed, as if waiting for a story to begin. In that boat sat a young boy and his faithful dog. The boy's legs hung over the side, his toes touching the cool surface. His dog, with fur as soft as feathers, lay beside him, head resting on his lap. They were not in a rush. They had nowhere to be, no place to go, only the lake, the sky, and each other. Above them, stars stretched across the heavens like silver dust. The sky was deep and endless, scattered with twinkling lights. Some stars blinked slowly. Others stayed bright and still, like tiny guardians watching over the lake. The moon, round and glowing, floated above like a calm lantern. The boy looked up and smiled. His hand moved gently across the dog's back, stroking in slow, steady motions. His voice was soft when he spoke, barely louder than the rustle of leaves in the breeze. "Do you remember the story of the cloud that wanted to become a fish?" he asked, glancing at his furry friend. The dog lifted his head slightly, wagging his tail. He didn't speak, of course, but his eyes sparkled with interest, like he understood every word. The boy began the tale. of a fluffy cloud who wished to swim, how it floated down during the rain and transformed into a drop that joined a river, how it traveled far and finally reached the sea, swimming with joy among colorful fish. The dog listened, ears twitching at the rhythm of the words. When the boy finished, the dog barked softly, then wagged again, as if asking for more. This time, the dog stood up, walked in a circle, and gave a playful nudge. The boy laughed, a sound that rippled across the water like a skipped stone. Even the stars seemed to shimmer brighter at the sound. Now it was the dog's turn. He didn't use words, but the boy knew how to understand. The wag of a tail, the way his nose pointed, the tilt of his head, all were part of the language they shared. The boy closed his eyes and listened with his heart. In his imagination, the dog told a story about a brave squirrel who built a flying leaf. The squirrel soared through autumn winds, chasing sunsets and dancing with birds. The boy pictured the tiny creature flying high, its eyes wide with wonder, and he giggled. Time passed slowly on the boat. The water barely moved, but every now and then the boat rocked gently, as if nodding to the stories. It didn't interrupt. It didn't creak too loud or shift too much. It simply swayed, offering a seat to the storytellers and joining them in silence. The lake was alive, even in its stillness. Crickets chirped near the shore, frogs croaked their low, sleepy tunes, and an owl hooted softly from a nearby tree. The night was full of sounds, but none were loud. Every noise was gentle, as if the whole world had agreed to whisper so the stories wouldn't be disturbed. The boy and his dog looked up again. A shooting star crossed the sky, leaving a glowing trail behind. The boy closed his eyes, making a wish. He didn't wish for toys or riches. He simply wished for this moment to last a little longer, for peace, for quiet, for friendship wrapped in night's calm. His dog nudged him once more and settled down, curling into a ball. The boy pulled out a soft blanket from the corner of the boat. It smelled like home, like sunshine, grass, and soap. He wrapped it around himself and his furry friend. Together, they sat like that, warm under the cool sky, surrounded by stars, cradled by the wooden boat. Soon, the boy's eyes grew heavy. His voice became slower, softer. The dog yawned, stretched once, then rested his head again. The wind kissed their cheeks gently like a lullaby without words. The moon moved slightly across the sky, time passing as quietly as a feather drifting through the air. Mist began to rise from the lake's surface. It wasn't thick. It floated like silk, wrapping around the boat, curling between the reeds, drifting slowly over the water. It touched the boat with care, like a soft blanket covering everything in dreams. The boat, old and wise, rocked just enough to lull them. It didn't need to speak. It listened. It remembered. It understood that moments like this were rare and precious. The laughter, the stories, the silence, the friendship. It held them all in its worn wooden frame, never letting go. The stars above blinked slower now, as if they too were getting ready to rest. A cool breeze whispered through the branches, and a few leaves fell gently into the water, creating ripples that faded quickly. The world was folding into sleep, layer by layer. The boy's breathing slowed. His chest rose and fell beneath the blanket. His dog didn't move, except for the twitch of an ear and the soft puff of air from his nose. They had fallen into a deep, peaceful slumber, safe within the embrace of night. No words were spoken anymore. No stories were told, but the dreams they carried danced in the air, floating with the mist held by the boat, watched over by stars. The owl flew silently above, circling once, then perched again nearby, keeping guard. Everything was still, but not empty. The quiet was full of meaning. The hush was rich with love, comfort, and calm. Even the lake, wide and deep, held the memory of the evening, the voices of a boy and his dog, the joy in their stories, the sound of laughter drifting into night. The water would remember, and the wind would carry whispers of this moment to other corners of the world. And far away, in places where the stars couldn't be seen, people would feel a strange warmth in their hearts, not knowing where it came from. But it came from here, from the boat, the lake, the boy, and his dog, sharing a peaceful moment that never truly ended. For peace doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need bright lights or loud applause. It needs only presence, stillness, and love. It arrives quietly and stays in hearts that are open. So the boat stayed, rocking slightly, whispering soft creaks, as if singing to the sleepers. The stars kept watch. The moon continued its journey across the sky, and the night, filled with quiet stories, held them all, safe, still, and surrounded by light. High above the world, where the land turns white and the air feels like a soft whisper, snow-covered mountains stood tall and still. These peaks touched the clouds, and their icy tops sparkled beneath the silver glow of the moon. The stars above twinkled like tiny lanterns, gently watching over the silent earth. In a small, hidden cave between the hills, a baby bear lay on a bed of pine needles and moss. Though night had fallen and everything was quiet, the little cub couldn't fall asleep. His eyes blinked slowly and his tiny paws moved restlessly. The cold didn't bother him. His thick fur kept him warm, but something inside him stirred. It wasn't fear or hunger. It was something softer, something strange. He just wasn't sleepy yet. Outside, the wind danced through the tall evergreens, singing songs only the forest could understand. It brushed past the mountaintops, swooping low and then rising again, like a bird playing in the sky. The baby bear listened. Each breeze brought a different sound, a story, a secret, or a lullaby. The wind carried tales from long ago, when the world was younger and the mountains were new. It spoke of old wolves who howled at golden moons, of rivers that once ran through the clouds, and of birds that lit up the sky like living stars. The cub listened with wide eyes, his ears twitching at every word the wind seemed to whisper. The trees, tall and wise, stood all around like gentle giants. Their branches swayed slowly, creating a soft music, almost like humming. The needles rustled in the breeze and snowflakes floated down silently. The trees didn't talk like the wind, but they shared their own kind of wisdom through the calm rhythm of their movement. It was like the earth breathing in its sleep. Suddenly, something bright and tiny appeared above the baby bear's nose. A firefly, glowing softly like a floating ember, danced through the cold air. It swirled and twirled in gentle circles, lighting up the space around it like a tiny lantern. The little bear followed it with his eyes, mesmerized. The light was warm, soft, and magical, not the kind that burned or blinded, but the kind that felt like a hug. He raised his paw, slowly and carefully, as the firefly landed on it for a brief moment. It tickled slightly. Then, the glowing friend took off again, leaving behind a trail of golden sparkles that faded into the chilly night. The baby bear watched it disappear into the sky, feeling peaceful, though still not quite sleepy. Above him, the sky stretched, forever, dark and deep. The stars sparkled like a river of light and the moon watched from above, round and glowing. It didn't speak, but its soft shine felt like a smile from far away. The moonlight touched the mountaintops, the trees, the snow, and the baby bear's fur, making everything seem softer, calmer. Slowly, clouds began to drift down from the sky. They were not thick or heavy. These were light and fluffy like soft scarves made of air and dreams. One cloud wrapped gently around the baby bear, like a blanket made of whispers. It held him carefully, not too tight, just enough to say, "You're safe." The baby bear yawned. His eyes fluttered, his breathing slowed. The stories from the wind, the songs from the trees, and the soft dance of the firefly had all joined together to create the perfect lullaby. The mountain, the sky, and everything in between had made a cozy home for his dreams. Just as he started to drift off, he felt something even more magical. The moon above, glowing with gentle light, seemed to lower its arms. Not real arms, but a feeling, as if it reached down and held him close. The baby bear smiled in his sleep. He felt wrapped in love, not just from the mountain or the night, but from the whole sky itself. All around him, the world continued to rest. The trees swayed in silence. The snowflakes floated without sound. The clouds curled around rocks and branches, bringing softness wherever they touched. The stars blinked slowly, and the moon kept shining, peaceful and proud. In his dreams, the baby bear traveled. He flew above the clouds, chasing fireflies. Through the sky, he slid down moonbeams and danced on star paths. He laughed with the wind and played tag with the light. Though his body lay still in the cave, his imagination soared across the night. The forest creatures nearby respected the silence. A wise old owl blinked from a tree, watching over everything with calm eyes. A fox curled beneath a bush, breathing deeply in its sleep. Tiny mice snuggled into nests, while a deer stood quietly by a frozen stream, listening to the hush. Even the mountain itself seemed to hum a gentle tune. The rocks, though strong and still, held warmth from the day's last sunbeam. They shared it with the baby bear, along with the stories written in their cracks and lines. The mountain was not lonely. It had many secrets, and tonight it shared them all in silence. Hours passed. The moon climbed higher, then began to lower again. Time flowed softly, like a gentle stream in spring. The world remained calm. No rush, no noise, only the soft rhythm of sleep and dreams. Inside the cave, the baby bear was still wrapped in his cloud blanket. His breathing was steady. His little paws twitched now and then, as if he was running through dreams. Maybe he was chasing more fireflies or sliding down snow hills in the sky. The wind, now softer than ever, passed through the trees once more. It peeked into the cave, smiled at the sleeping cub, and continued its journey. The firefly returned for a moment, hovering above the bear's head, glowing brighter for just a second, perhaps as a goodnight kiss. The stars began to fade as dawn approached. A light blue color touched the edges of the sky, but the baby bear slept on, held by dreams, wrapped in comfort, protected by the night. The moon, now sleepy itself, began to disappear slowly behind the mountains, its job done for now. When the sun finally rose, soft and golden, it kissed the snowy hills with light. Birds began to sing, and the forest stretched quietly as it woke. But inside that small, safe cave, the baby bear still slumbered, peaceful and calm. He didn't stir. He didn't need to. He was in the safest place of all, inside the arms of a world that loved him, in the heart of the mountains, where dreams come gently and sleep wraps around you like the warmest hug. Though the night had passed, its magic stayed. It lived in the snow, in the trees, in the sky, and in the heart of one small cub who had listened to the wind, followed the light, and found rest in the arms of a sleepy moon. In a small, cozy room filled with soft blankets and gentle moonlight, a tired little boy rested quietly. His head lay on a fluffy pillow, and his eyelids grew heavy. The stars outside twinkled like tiny night lamps in the sky. Everything around him was peaceful. The night had arrived, bringing with it silence, calm air, and dreams waiting to begin. On his bedside table lay a folded piece of paper. Earlier that evening, he had shaped it into a flying toy using his tiny hands. It wasn't just ordinary paper. It was special, filled with hope, wonder, and secret wishes made just before bedtime. This paper plane had a mission: to carry the dreams of a sleepy child across the world. As the boy's breathing slowed and his body relaxed, something magical happened. The paper plane lifted gently from the wooden surface. It floated upward, light as a feather, glowing with a soft silver shimmer. The wind from the open window helped it rise higher and higher until it slipped into the starry night above. The sky stretched far and wide, deep and quiet. The moon smiled softly from above, watching the little plane soar higher, gliding smoothly between drifting clouds. The world below was dark, but not cold. Lights from homes, streets, and distant buildings sparkled like treasure scattered across a map. First, the paper plane passed over a city filled with lights and whispers. Tall buildings stood like sleeping giants. Some windows still glowed with late-night readers, storytellers, or children sneaking in one last glance at their favorite picture. Books. As the plane passed by, it listened closely and gently gathered bedtime thoughts and whispered wishes. Next, it flew over vast deserts where the sand glimmered under the moon's soft gaze. The wind danced quietly across the dunes, creating waves that moved like golden rivers. In this quiet land, a shepherd leaned against a rock, telling an old story to his loyal camel under the stars. The paper plane circled above and picked up his calm voice, adding the tale to its growing collection of nighttime memories. Farther still, the plane glided across enormous oceans. The water below shimmered like silk under the night sky. Fish sparkled just beneath the surface, and whales sang songs that echoed through the deep. On a small boat floating gently between the waves, a girl curled up with a blanket, gazing at the stars above. She whispered a wish into the wind. The plane dipped low and caught it, adding it to the bundle of dreams already gathered. The paper plane flew gently, never rushing, never rushing. It passed over quiet forests where owls blinked from branches and foxes curled up in their dens. In snowy mountains, it glided over frozen peaks where wolves slept under the stars. It touched every corner of the earth, collecting soft words, kind thoughts, gentle hopes, and peaceful dreams. From village huts to high towers, from quiet gardens to wide plains, the plane gathered every bedtime wish it could find. Though it flew far and wide, the plane never got tired. Its wings, made of folded love and imagination, were light but strong. It knew its mission was important, to return to the boy and share the magic of every place it had visited. After many hours of travel, the plane finally turned toward home. The night was still deep, and the world below had grown even quieter. Birds rested in their nests, animals dreamed in burrows, and people everywhere were tucked under warm covers. The sky welcomed the little plane back, opening space between stars to help guide it home. Back in the small bedroom, the boy still slept. His cheeks were warm, and his fingers curled gently around his pillow. The room glowed softly with moonlight slipping through the curtains. Just then, the paper plane floated gently through the window. It didn't make a sound. It hovered, near the boy's ear, full of stories from all the places it had seen. And then it began to whisper. It told him about the man in the desert, who shared a tale about a moon camel that could find water in dreams. It told him about the girl on the boat, who wished to speak the language of dolphins. It spoke of cities filled with laughter, forests singing lullabies, and mountains that hummed bedtime tunes only snowflakes could hear. The boy didn't wake, but a smile formed on his lips. His breathing deepened as the stories filled his heart. He heard tales of glowing jellyfish beneath the sea, of children in tree houses writing messages to the stars, of old women in gardens teaching fireflies to blink in rhythm. Every story wrapped around him like a blanket woven from moonlight and stardust. The paper plane kept whispering, slower now. Its job was nearly done. The boy, still asleep, was now dreaming of adventures, places he'd never seen, and voices he'd never heard. But in his dreams, everything was familiar, like memories from another life or a lullaby sung long ago. Finally, the plane floated back to the table where it had started. It landed softly, its wings slightly bent from the journey but glowing brighter than ever. Though made of paper, it carried something powerful. Every dream it had caught, every word it had heard, every hope it had collected. The boy rested peacefully. In his dreams, he flew with the paper plane through skies made of light, diving through cloud castles and talking to whales that sang in colors. He visited every place the plane had seen. He rode the desert wind, danced on ocean waves, and listened to stars tell jokes to the moon. Outside, the night gently moved on. The moon began to dip low, and the first light of morning touched the edge of the sky. Birds stretched their wings and trees shook off the night's stillness. But inside the room, time slowed down. The boy was safe in his dream world, held by stories and soothed by soft whispers. And the paper plane rested nearby, ready to fly again another night. Its wings were quiet now, but filled with the promise of more dreams to carry, more wishes to find, more stories to share. It waited patiently for the next nightfall, for the next sleepy breath, for the next tiny whisper of adventure. The wind outside shifted gently, like a lullaby sigh. Everything was still. Everything was calm. In this moment, all around the world, children were dreaming, stories were growing, and paper planes waited to take flight. High above the world, where the colors of the sky shift gently from bright blue to soft orange, a lonely cloud drifted slowly. It wasn't large or heavy. It had a quiet shape, light and soft, moving without sound through the evening air. As the sun lowered beyond the hills, painting the sky in golden shades, this small cloud floated alone, looking for something, but it didn't know what. The air around it was cool. The wind blew softly, guiding the cloud along gentle paths. Below, fields stretched far and wide. Trees stood still, their leaves barely moving. The horizon glowed with the final light of the day, while stars slowly peeked from the darkening canvas above. Though the cloud had traveled many skies, it always moved by itself. It had seen valleys, mountains, rivers, and oceans, but never stopped. It was used to flying quietly, unnoticed. But tonight, something inside it felt different. The cloud felt a quiet emptiness, like a song missing its final note. It began to wish, in its silent way, for company, for someone to float beside. As it wandered through the peaceful sky, the cloud noticed a small shape fluttering in the distance. It looked like a bird, flying without direction. The cloud moved closer, careful not to startle the creature. When it reached her, it saw that the bird looked tired. Her wings beat slowly and her eyes seemed unsure. She wasn't gliding happily like most birds do in the evening breeze. Instead, she moved like someone trying to find a path home, but unable to see where it led. The cloud floated near and spoke gently, not with words, but with a presence soft as feathers. The bird turned and saw the pale shape beside her. She didn't feel fear. She felt calm, like finding shade on a warm day. She chirped quietly, explaining in her own way that she had lost her way. The wind had carried her far from her usual path and she could not find her flock. The cloud listened. It had no wings, but it had drifted across many skies. It knew how. It felt to travel far without another to share the journey. It offered the bird a place to rest. She hesitated, but her wings ached, and the offer felt kind. So she landed gently on the softest part of the cloud and nestled into its cool, gentle surface. Together, they continued through the twilight. Neither spoke much, but in the silence, there was peace. They shared their stories, not through noise but through feelings, through memories carried in the breeze. The bird spoke of her life, soaring through forests, dipping into lakes, chasing beams of sunlight. She had once flown over gardens full of laughter and rooftops warmed by cooking fires. She remembered the sound of children playing and the way the morning dew glistened on blades of grass. Her memories fluttered like soft songs in the evening air. The cloud shared too. It told tales of the skies, of watching storms from above, of painting rainbows after heavy showers, of hiding the sun during the hottest afternoons so creatures below could rest in the shade. It had no voice, but its presence held the calm of quiet rain and the comfort of soft shadows. As night deepened, stars spread like glitter across the heavens. The moon, silver and kind, began its slow climb across the sky. The world below dimmed, lights glowing here and there from homes, farms, and lanterns. Crickets began to sing, and the coolness of night crept gently over the land. The cloud and the bird, still together, now floated as one. The bird yawned, a small, sleepy sound. Her feathers ruffled in the night breeze. She looked around and saw only darkness below, yet up here, beside her floating friend, she felt safe. She tucked her head beneath her wing and let her body rest completely on the soft, floating surface. The cloud, careful not to shift too quickly, continued its gentle movement. It held the bird without weight, as if keeping a delicate leaf from falling. Together, they moved like a lullaby across the dark sky. Above them, stars whispered stories only the heavens knew, of ancient skies, forgotten wishes, and the dreams of wanderers. The wind told secrets as it flowed past, secrets of forests at midnight, mountains sleeping under snow, and oceans dreaming beneath moonlight. The bird, half asleep, listened. She dreamed of flying without worry, of finding paths made of song, of sharing stories with skies instead of searching alone. The cloud, soft and thoughtful, continued its path, content to be the pillow for a friend who had once been lost. Soon, the air became still, not silent, but calm, like a world holding its breath in peace. The stars grew brighter, the moon shone softly, and the land below slept under a blanket of silver night. The cloud began to descend ever so slightly, not to land, but to move lower, closer to the tops of trees, where fireflies blinked and owls blinked slowly from their branches. The bird stirred, blinking her eyes. She looked down and saw familiar shapes: a gentle hill, a sparkling river, and a tall tree where she had once perched before sunrise. She chirped lightly. The cloud understood. It slowed its movement and hovered, just above the treetop. The bird flapped her wings once, then again. Her strength had returned. The comfort of companionship had filled her heart, and now she was ready. She looked at the cloud with soft eyes. No words passed, but feelings did. Thankfulness, kindness, and the warmth of connection filled the space between them. With a final gentle chirp, the bird lifted from the cloud and glided down to the tree. She landed quietly, blending into the quiet of the world around her. The cloud lingered a little longer, watching from above. Then, with a slow turn, it rose again, continuing its peaceful journey across the sky. Though they were apart now, the memory of the shared flight remained. The cloud would carry that moment in its soft heart, and the bird would remember the gentle traveler who had given her comfort when the world felt too big. As dawn approached, the edge of the sky turned pale pink. The stars slowly faded, and the moon dipped behind the hills. The world began to wake once more. But high above, that little cloud drifted on, not lonely anymore. For now, it knew that even short meetings can fill the heart for a long time. And somewhere below, in a leafy tree warmed by the first light of morning, a bird looked up and saw a cloud that seemed to wave goodbye with a shimmer of golden light. She chirped once, softly, and the sky, in return, smiled. In a quiet part of the world, far from roads and loud cities, there was a secret place. It wasn't marked on any map, and no signs pointed toward it. This was a hidden garden, wrapped in green vines filled with soft moss, blooming flowers, and trees that whispered to one another when the breeze passed through. Here, time slowed down. Everything moved gently, like a lullaby in the wind. In this peaceful spot, a young girl wandered barefoot each evening. She wore a simple dress that fluttered when she twirled, and her hair always carried the sweet scent of lavender. She didn't speak much, but she listened to everything. The songs of the birds, the chatter of the squirrels, and the soft sighs of the trees. One golden evening, as the sky turned the color of peaches and honey, she spotted something new. Near the edge of a tiny pond, resting beside a clump of bluebells, was a snail. But this was no ordinary snail. His shell shimmered with soft colors that changed as he moved. Not quickly, but slowly, like a deep breath. She bent down to get a closer look. The snail peeked out, his eyes sleepy and kind. Though he didn't speak with words, the girl felt something magical about him. It was as if he carried something important, something special, on his back. The girl returned the next evening, and there he was again, nestled among the same flowers. She sat nearby, careful not to disturb anything. The snail slowly lifted his head and, in a voice only she could hear, shared a secret dream. He spoke of a place made of stardust and feathers, where bears danced on clouds and laughter floated like bubbles. His voice felt like warm tea, soft and comforting. The girl listened, eyes wide and heart calm. By the time the story ended, the stars had appeared, and her eyes felt heavy with sleep. She returned again the following night, and again, and again. Each evening brought a new dream, tucked safely inside the gentle spirals of the snail's shell. He told her of underwater kingdoms lit by glowing fish, of libraries in the sky where owls read ancient scrolls, and of forests that hummed songs made of wind and light. Fireflies appeared each night, blinking softly like tiny lanterns. They danced above the grass and floated down little trails, their glow lighting the way toward sleep. The girl would lie back on a bed of petals and moss, listening to the last words of the snail's tale as her eyes slowly closed. The snail explained in his soft way that he was the keeper of forgotten dreams. Dreams that children once had but let go of too soon. He gathered them, kept them safe, and shared them with hearts that still believed in wonder. The girl never asked where he came from or how he knew so many things. She simply returned each evening, ready to listen, ready to dream. Sometimes his stories were about quiet things, a raindrop's journey from sky to soil, or the secret life of shadows in moonlight. Other times, his dreams were full of adventure. A balloon floating past the clouds, a fox racing the wind, a lonely mountain that wished to become a hill so children could climb it. Every tale had its own rhythm, its own music. Some made her giggle. Some made her sigh. A few brought tiny tears to her eyes, but they were soft tears, the kind that fall when you feel full of something beautiful. The garden itself seemed to know the snail's voice. When he spoke, the flowers leaned in. The trees stilled. Even the frogs by the pond sat quietly, listening. And when the dream ended, a hush would settle over everything, like the moment right before a dream begins. One night, as the girl arrived with stars above her and the grass cool under her toes, she found the snail waiting, as always. But tonight, he seemed more tired than usual. His colors dimmed slightly, his movements slower than before. He looked up and whispered that he had only one dream left to share. The girl felt something shift in her chest. She sat very close and listened carefully. The final dream was softer than the rest. He told her about a place beyond time, where dreams become real, a place where clouds are pillows and wishes fall like snowflakes, where every kind heart finds a home and every quiet soul is heard. As he spoke, the fireflies formed a glowing path that circled around them, rising slowly like golden mist. The moon watched from above, round and gentle, while the stars blinked in steady rhythm as if breathing. When the tale ended, the girl didn't feel sleepy like she usually did. Instead, she felt full, not in her stomach, but in her spirit. The snail looked up at her and smiled with his eyes. He said in a whisper soft as dew, "You have listened with your heart. Now you carry the dreams." She didn't understand at first, but when she blinked, the snail's shell began to glow, softly, then brighter still. He curled slowly into the center of his spiral shell and then, like mist in the morning sun, he vanished. Not gone, but part of the garden now. The girl sat still, the quiet wrapping around her like a gentle hug. She placed her hand on the patch of grass where the snail had rested. It was warm. From that night forward, the garden changed. It still looked the same, the trees, the pond, the flowers, but it felt even more alive. Now, when the girl walked the garden paths, dreams rose like fog from the grass. She could hear whispers in the wind, see stories written in the clouds, feel secrets in the petals of flowers. And when other children visited, drawn by the garden's peace, she would sit with them in the same place, telling soft stories of wonder and sleep. She didn't remember every word the snail had said, but the feeling stayed, and somehow the dreams came through her voice. The fireflies still lit the paths every night. The stars still blinked their sleepy light. The moon still smiled as it passed overhead. And in the deepest part of the garden, where time still moved slow, the spirit of the dream snail lingered. Not seen, but always there. Now, when a child listens to the breeze in the leaves, or watches fireflies blinking in the dark, they might hear something else. A tiny whisper, a gentle hum, a small voice saying, "There are dreams all around. You only have to listen." And if they sit very still, with open hearts and quiet minds, the dreams will come to them, like petals falling into their hands. The girl, now a little older, still returns every evening. She still walks barefoot. She still watches the stars. But now, she is the one who carries dreams, gently, lovingly, sharing them with those who need them most. In a peaceful little village tucked between green hills and quiet meadows, there was a hush that covered everything when evening arrived. The sun, tired from its journey across the sky, slipped behind the mountains, painting the sky with soft colors: pink, orange, and a touch of gold. As the shadows stretched and the birds sang their final songs for the day, something magical began to stir. A soft breeze awakened. It wasn't loud or strong. It didn't howl or rush. Instead, it was gentle, almost like a whisper with wings. This breeze liked to travel slowly, drifting from place to place, touching everything with care. It moved like a kind friend, unnoticed but always there. As it wandered into the village, it touched the tops of trees, making the leaves dance. Quietly, it glided past wooden fences and over cobbled paths. The air carried the smell of freshly baked bread and blooming jasmine. Every home had a warm glow coming from its windows, and the sound of dinner plates being cleared or lullabies being sung could be heard faintly through the walls. The breeze twirled around an old lantern hanging from a porch and made a wind chime sing a sleepy tune. The gentle music floated through the air, mixing with the breeze's own soft hum. Curtains in open windows rustled lightly, waving as the wind passed by like an invisible friend saying hello. In one little house near the center of the village lived a young girl. Her room was small but full of warmth. A teddy bear sat on her bed, books lined a small shelf, and stars were painted on the ceiling. That evening, as the night tiptoed in, the girl snuggled under her blanket. Her eyes were getting heavy, but sleep had not yet arrived. That's when the breeze slipped through her slightly open window. It didn't need to knock or ask. It simply glided in, as if it had always belonged there. It circled once around the room, brushing past the pages of an open storybook, lifting her hair slightly and making her giggle in her sleepiness. Then it settled gently beside her pillow. But this was no ordinary breeze. It came from distant lands, far beyond the mountains, deserts, and rivers. As it moved, it gathered whispers, songs, and tales from every corner of the world. It listened to dolphins singing beneath the sea, to trees telling stories to each other in the forest, and to the laughter of children playing under the stars in lands the girl had never seen. Now, in her quiet room, the breeze began to share what it had learned. It didn't speak with words, but with feelings, warm ones that wrapped around her like a soft hug. The girl closed her eyes, listening with her heart. She saw a land of golden sand where camels walked in the moonlight, their footsteps leaving stories in the dunes. She floated through skies where hot air balloons carried travelers above cities sparkling like jewels. She flew over oceans where glowing fish painted the water with colors the world had never named. She giggled as she landed in a field full of dancing sheep wearing scarves made of clouds. She saw turtles telling bedtime stories to baby stars. A tree with silver leaves bowed and let her swing from its lowest branch. A squirrel offered her a cup of warm cocoa made from dreamberries. None of this was real, but it all felt true. The breeze, like a caring guide, moved her gently from one dream to the next. It never rushed. It waited for her to explore each new moment before showing her the next magical place. The stars above her bed seemed to glow a little brighter, as if they too were part of the journey. Down below, the village remained calm. The breeze passed through other windows as well, visiting sleeping children and whispering dreams into their ears. It didn't speak the same stories to each one. It knew their hearts, their wishes, their quiet thoughts. Some it carried to floating islands filled with glowing butterflies. Others it took to moonlit forests where trees hummed lullabies in languages only dreamers understood. But to the girl in the little room, it brought comfort more than anything. It reminded her that the world was wide, full of wonder, and waiting to be discovered. If not now, then in dreams. She hugged her pillow tightly, her smile calm and full. Her breathing slowed, and her tiny fingers loosened. She had completely let go of the waking world. She drifted, like a feather caught in the sky, into places where the sun and moon could talk, where clouds told riddles, and rivers sang songs in soft, watery voices. Back in the room, the breeze slowly rose, its work complete. It didn't say goodbye because it never really left. It lingered for a moment, brushing against the edges of the curtain one last time. Then it slipped back out into the night. Outside, the stars blinked kindly. The moon hung low, watching over the village like a guardian of dreams. Trees swayed softly and the breeze carried on, past fields, across hills, and into other homes where children waited for sleep. Sometimes it floated above lakes where frogs croaked their nighttime songs. Other times it passed through valleys where deer walked gently under starlit skies. And always it carried its gift: the stories of the world, the songs of the sky, the secrets of the wind. It wasn't just the girl who felt the breeze's kindness. Even the night seemed gentler wherever it passed. The dark didn't feel scary when the breeze was near. It felt full of promise, the promise of rest, of imagination, of adventure without fear. And so the breeze wandered. It had no name, no home, and no end. It belonged to the night, to the stars, to every sleepy child with eyes just beginning to close. It never asked for thanks. Its joy came from the smiles it left behind, the peace it brought to tiny hearts. As for the little girl, she would wake each morning with a soft glow in her eyes. She didn't remember every detail of her dreams, but the feeling stayed. She knew she had gone somewhere beautiful. She knew something had watched over her. And sometimes when she sat by her window in the evening, she would close her eyes and wait. She could feel it, the light kiss of air brushing her cheek, the soft lift of her hair, the whisper of something unseen. Then she would smile, pull her blanket close, and get ready to dream again. Because in that quiet village and all across the world, the breeze still roamed, invisible but always present, carrying stories, spreading warmth, and gently guiding little ones into the sweetest sleep.